All right, good morning and welcome to our second program that we're going to be working with. This week we're going to learn to work with Adobe Illustrator. We spent the first quarter working with Adobe Photoshop, and Adobe Illustrator is something we are going to work on during the second quarter. And then you guys are also going to learn to combine and work with both Photoshop and Illustrator in tandem. Because they're both owned by Adobe, they both work pretty well as a one-two punch for graphic design and digital art. Now, when you first open Adobe Illustrator, you may be met with this system compatibility report. All you need to do is just click the button that says continue with known issues, and it will fire the program right up. Now, I am going to create a new document, and when I do, I am very partial to letter size because that's the size that we print. But you may notice that Adobe is presenting our size as points. We can click here to get it to convert to inches. All right, 8.5 inches is equivalent to 612 by 792 points, but since we're used to thinking about it in inches in terms of the print size, I think that's what we want to go with. Also, the color mode will be somewhat different for Illustrator files. We're going to work with CMYK color rather than RGB. And the colors that we get will be a little bit closer to, oops, I don't need to hit that. They'll be a little bit closer to what the printer will actually produce. Because things you make in Photoshop aren't always destined to be printed out, but things you make in Illustrator almost certainly are. So we want to have 300 pixels per inch. All of these are default settings. About the only thing that I'm going to change is I'm going to ask the orientation to go landscape rather than portrait mode. But that's just a personal choice because I feel like it gives me a little more canvas on a horizontal monitor. Okay, so I'm going to hit create, and I'll get a brand new blank white artboard. Now, when you first look at your setup, you may not see the same view that I see. So what you want to do is go to Window, Workspace, and what I really like is Essentials Classic. And some of you guys have used this in Photoshop. If you get things that are missing or you want to just reset the workspace, go down to where it says reset, and in this case it'll say reset Essentials Classic. Alright, so that cleans it up and it kind of gives you whatever the starting set of windows will be. Now, the most important ones to notice are the layers window, the color window, and the swatches windows, and also the stroke, gradient, and transparency windows. Those are good because each individual shape can have a different transparency and transparency mode rather than simply the layers as it worked in Photoshop. Now, here's the deal. We're brand new to the program today, so we're only going to start with a couple of new concepts. The first thing I want you guys to notice are the tools that we have up here. Yours may look like this, okay? If you press the little double-sided arrow, you can expand it. But the black arrow is your selection tool that works like the move tool in Photoshop. And the rectangle tool has the same keyboard shortcut M as the rectangle marquee. So I'm going to go ahead and create a rectangle real quick just so you can see the properties that it has. And I'm going to use the selection tool to move it around. Okay? It presents you with a bounding box, meaning that you can resize it. Now you can also adjust the stroke weight here in the stroke window, but that is also available to you up here at the top. So the same area will let you choose a weight of the stroke. You can choose a color for the stroke and a color for the fill. Okay, and you can flip-flop those by pressing the letter X. All right, that's the same shortcut for flipping the foreground and background as we had in Photoshop. Now, there's two types of selection tools. There's the selection tool that selects the entire shape, and the direct selection tool, which selects individual lines or points and allows you to click and drag and customize your shapes. Now, we want to make a series of shapes, and I think probably the best way to go about doing this, gang, is to click and hold on your rectangle tool and grab this little tear off window, because I want you to play around with making, a few different shapes. I'm going to go ahead and use my selection tool to move this rectangle over. I'll quickly give it a different fill and stroke color and weight. All right, but I want to make a series of at least 5 different shapes. So I'll make a rounded rectangle, apply some different colors to that, I will make an ellipse, which, whoops, try that again. It can be oval shaped, or if you hold shift, it can be circular. There is a polygon tool, which when you first create it, creates a hexagon. But if you click one time, it will present you with a window that basically allows you to decide the size and the number of sides. So you can have as few as 3 and create a triangle, or you can have as many as probably up to 99 before it will start giving you real problems. The other thing that you can do with the polygon tool is when you're clicking and dragging it, before I let go of the mouse button, if I press the up arrow on my keyboard, it allows me to create more sides. So if I want to make a pentagon, I can make a pentagon. I'll press D to give it the default fill and stroke, so I'm getting a little bit of variety here. And also the star tool. The star tool starts off with 5 points, but if I click and drag, and before I let go of the mouse button, if I press the down arrow or the up arrow, I can control the number of tines on the star, and if I hold down the control key, I can control the length of the tines, which is kind of a nice feature. So I want you guys to create a variety of shapes. Get used to using your selection arrow. The letter V is your shortcut to move things around or resize things. Okay. The letter A selects the direct selection arrow. Now that will allow you to grab individual anchor points and move them. You can grab individual lines and move them. Or if you click in the center of an object, you can move the entire object. All right, so it's a pretty versatile tool. So those shortcuts are V for the black arrow, the selection tool, and A for the white arrow, the direct selection tool. All right, so what I'm going to have you guys do is play with adding custom colors and shapes to these. We want to have a variety of stroke weights. There are a number of different ways that you can play with the stroke. If I choose a very thick stroke on this modified star, you can see as the stroke gets thicker, it starts to encroach on the center of the shape. So that's where you would want to maybe click on the stroke and ask it to align to the outside rather than the center. So no matter how thick we make that stroke, it doesn't encroach on the center area where we have a fill. Okay. Now there's a couple of other options. We have gradients that you can apply, as well as patterns which you can apply. And in a later lesson, you guys will learn how to make your very own patterns and gradient fills. So play with these shapes, apply some different patterns, fills of solid color, and also gradients. And if you click on the gradient window, you can play with the way in which those gradients are processed. You can even click and drag a color to add to the gradient if you want, and change the way they mix. All right. Experiment while you're working. Obviously, we want to do a quick save. You can go ahead and save to the cloud. That's not a bad idea. I'll call it 5 shapes. And when you're done, when you've created at least 5 shapes and customized them, go ahead and export as. We'll do File, Export As, and I'm going to try to export it as a JPEG. I think that's a nice universal file format to go with. And I'm going to check this one box, Use Artboards. What that does is it won't export anything that's outside of the white bounding box for our image. I think that's just a good general idea to use because there will be times where you'll have shapes that are sticking off the edge of the screen. And this is the printable area inside the white artboard, so we're going to go ahead and stick with that as well. All right, so when it presents you with image mode CMYK, it should be fine. Always max out your quality and keep your resolution high. I will demonstrate something in a separate video to show you the difference between a low-res export and a high-res export, which really gets down to the differences between vector art, which is what these clusters of shapes being combined are all about. That's how Illustrator works, versus bitmap or raster art, which is made of pixels, and that is how Adobe Photoshop operates. So I'm going to stop the video here. I want you guys to get at least as far along as I have, save your work, and then you can move on to the next video when you're done.